Space was never quiet, at least not when you were stuck listening to Captain Vexar Lund's playlist, which consisted of nothing but the sound of explosions and the occasional groan of regretful decisions. The dimension-hopping ship, dubbed the misguided optimism by those unfortunate enough to be on it, hummed like a drunk bee trying to find a straight line home. "All right, team. I hope you all got your how to be diplomatic with aliens homework done," Vexar's voice crackled through the comms, sounding like a man who'd learned diplomacy from a particularly angry toaster. "Captain, I thought the whole point of a negotiation was to avoid homework," Sergeant Calix japed back, her voice laced with the kind of sarcasm that could cut through space itself. "Explain it to the aliens," Vexar replied, glancing at the team spread around the comically compact bridge, each member looking like they wanted to be anywhere but in their current situation. "We land, we negotiate, we leave. Easy as failing basic training." Their task was simple in theory, but theories were like space toilets, often full of crap. The comet loomed ahead like an oversized celestial zit, ready to pop with the slightest provocation. Its surface was dotted with ancient alien symbols, glowing dimly, as if even they couldn't be bothered to shine brightly for these uninvited guests. As the ship touched down with the grace of a drunken ballerina, the team geared up. Vexar led the charge, his armor mismatched and dented, much like his expectations of the universe. Sergeant Calix followed, her expression set to resting disinterest. Then there was Technician Lardo, who'd managed to fit what looked like an entire junkyard into his backpack. "You never know what you might need," he'd say, every time someone asked why he needed a deflated rubber chicken in his toolkit. The comet's surface crunched underfoot, the sound like someone chewing on a mouthful of gravel. "Well, isn't this cozy?" Vexar muttered, surveying the alien delegates waiting at the makeshift negotiating table, a slab of rock adorned with what could only be described as cosmic graffiti. Two aliens, looking like they'd wandered out of a child's nightmare after a particularly sugary meal, greeted them. Their skin shifted colors like a mood ring with severe emotional issues, and their eyes were the size of dinner plates, perfect for staring in wide-eyed confusion at the mess that was humanity. "Greetings," said the taller one, its voice a blend of chimes and drowned cats. "We are here to negotiate through the ancient and sacred games of our people." Vexar's team exchanged looks, the universal "what the hell have we stepped into now" expression passing between them. "Games?" Calix asked, visibly trying not to laugh. "You mean like hopscotch or hide and seek?" "Precisely," the second alien replied, its eyes lighting up like a Christmas tree with a short circuit. "The fate of our negotiations will be determined by the outcome of these games." "Great," Vexar sighed. "Our last hopes rest on being the galaxy's most competitive child." The first game was something resembling tag, but with a twist. The aliens called it "Run Like Your Life Depends on It," and considering the stakes, it probably did. The rules were explained in a series of hand gestures and unintelligible blips, leaving the team to piece together that the goal was to avoid being it, while also solving a riddle about quantum physics on the move. "Easy. I've had hangovers that made more sense than this," Lardo grumbled, adjusting his backpack for maximum junk-rattling potential. The game commenced with Vexar's team scrambling like ants under a magnifying glass. The alien children, if that's what they were, darted around with an agility that suggested they hadn't spent their formative years stuck in front of a holographic screen. Vexar, however, had the speed of a man who'd sprinted for the last donut at a police convention. Calix deftly sidestepped an alien child darting towards her, her face a mask of concentration mixed with "I can't believe this is my life now." "What's the quantum riddle again?" she shouted, ducking under a flailing tentacle. "Something about Schrödinger's cat and whether it likes laser pointers," Lardo replied, barely dodging a tackle. Despite the chaos, Vexar found himself laughing, a rare sound akin to a broken car alarm. "I didn't think I'd be using my PE lessons to save humanity," he wheezed, narrowly avoiding a collision with an alien. Time passed in a blur of dodging, thinking, and a very confused Schrödinger's cat. Eventually, the aliens threw up their hands, possibly from exhaustion or a realization that human adults were better at evasion than expected. "A draw," the taller alien declared, its tone suggesting surprise and begrudging respect. "We shall proceed to the next game." The next game involved constructing something that resembled a spaceship out of cosmic utensils and abandoned dreams. "Or as we call it, a regular Tuesday," Vexar quipped, eyeing the pile of parts that included what looked like a wheel from a shopping cart. "Is this some kind of cosmic IKEA furniture challenge?" Calix asked, picking up a piece that might have been a steering wheel or possibly an avant-garde salad bowl. Lardo, in his element, dove into the pile like a kid in a ball pit. "I knew I brought this deflated chicken for a reason," he crowed, sticking it on top of the structure for aesthetic flair. Time ticked by as they assembled their masterpiece, a Frankenstein's monster of metal and hope, while the aliens watched with expressions that could be confusion or mild indigestion. "Behold, the hopes and dreams," Vexar announced, stepping back to admire their handiwork. It was. Well, it was there, and sometimes that's all that could be asked. "The symmetry is interesting," one alien said diplomatically, its eyes flickering like a faulty bulb. "It's postmodern," Lardo offered, which was code for we had no idea what we were doing. As they awaited the alien judgment, Vexar leaned towards Calix, his voice low. "Think they'll go for it? If they do, it means the universe has a sense of humor," she replied, crossing her fingers in a gesture of universal hope. The aliens conferred, their language a series of clicks and whistles that sounded oddly like a nervous tick. Finally, they turned to the team, their expressions as inscrutable as a poker face on a mannequin. "You have succeeded," the taller alien declared, to which Vexar and his team resisted the urge to collapse in relieved laughter. "Of course we did," Vexar said, his voice brimming with the false bravado that had gotten them this far. "We're professionals." The alien's eyes twinkled, possibly with amusement or maybe just the reflection of the comet's surface. "The final challenge awaits," they announced, signaling for the team to follow them to a new area, a space marked by ancient carvings and a sense of impending mischief. As they walked, Vexar muttered to his team, "Let's hope the last game isn't who can survive the longest in a vacuum." "I'd bet on the deflated chicken," Lardo replied, earning a snort from Calix. They arrived at an arena carved into the comet's surface, the final stage set for a game that required both cunning and a sense of humor, the very attributes their team had in spades, if nothing else. The alien children gathered around, their eyes wide with anticipation, as if ready to see whether these strange humans could pull one more rabbit out of their space helmet. "The game is Cosmic Charades," the tallest alien announced with a flourish. "May the best beings win." Vexar and his team exchanged looks, the unspoken agreement that if they were going to bumble through this, they might as well do it with style. "Well, team," Vexar said, cracking his knuckles, "let's show them how humans make fools of themselves." With pride. With that, the game began, and so did the final act of their improbable mission. Whatever awaited them at the end, they'd face it with the same irreverent determination that had seen them this far, proving once again that even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, humanity's greatest weapon was its ability to laugh at itself even as it stumbled forward. The arena carved into the comet's surface gleamed underfoot like the world's most uninviting ice rink, its carved symbols glowing like mood lighting in a dive bar. Captain Vexar Lund stood at the edge, contemplating what fresh cosmic absurdity they'd stumbled into. "Cosmic charades," Vexar muttered, shaking his head. "I guess pin the tail on the galactic donkey was booked." Sergeant Calix chuckled, cracking her knuckles. "If they think we're going to prance around like mimes on space crack, they've got another thing coming." Technician Lardo, lugging his ubiquitous backpack, was already pulling out objects with abandon. Do you think this deflated rubber chicken could convey hope or despair? I'm going for deep metaphor here. Hope, Vexar replied dryly. Always aim high, Lardo. The aliens, their eyes wide as saucers and just as inscrutable, waited with the kind of anticipatory silence that made humans uncomfortable. These games, it seemed, were not merely for amusement. The stakes were high. One wrong move and they'd be the laughing stock of the galaxy, assuming they survived to hear the jokes. Lieutenant Jace Thorne, the strategic mind of the group, approached with the kind of solemnity usually reserved for disarming bombs. Charades, huh? I hated these at holiday parties. Always ended with Aunt Mabel throwing the mashed potatoes. Think of it as a different kind of potato, Calix suggested. One that might explode in your face. Jace studied the arena, brow furrowed. These symbols. They're not just decoration. Every mark, every line, it's like a blueprint. Blueprint to what? Winning hearts and minds through interpretive dance. Vexar's eyebrows rose, his sarcasm a familiar weapon. Possibly, Jace replied, unfazed. Or maybe something more complex. These aliens don't seem like the type to do anything halfway. The first round commenced with an alien stepping forward, gesticulating in what could only be described as an attempt at modern art. It twisted and turned, conveying something deep and profound, or maybe just constipated. Hard to say. Looks like it's trying to demonstrate existential crisis, Calix remarked, squinting at the display. Or bad shellfish, Lardo added, earning a snort from Thorne. The humans were up next. Vexar took the lead, opting for a time-honored classic, The Death of a Star, known in his high school charades circle as a crowd pleaser, assuming the crowd enjoyed watching a grown man mimic a supernova. Remember, do it with feeling, Calix whispered as Vexar took center stage. Feeling. I left that on Earth, he shot back, before launching into an elaborate pantomime involving spread arms, an imaginary explosion, and a mournful collapse. It was either a stunning portrayal of cosmic death or the world's worst fainting spell. The aliens watched intently, their expressions unchanging, though one nudged another as if to say, I think he's onto something. How'd I do? Vexar asked, struggling to catch his breath. Lardo gave a thumbs up. You nailed Dying Swan, just needed a to-do. Great, so next is Black Hole, right? Calix stepped forward, a determined glint in her eye. Jace was busy analyzing the symbols, muttering to himself. This isn't random. There's a pattern. If we can align our charades with the symbols, we might actually pull this off. Great theory, but unless you speak universal mime, we're going to need more than patterns, Vexar said, wiping sweat from his brow. Calix began her attempt at Black Hole, a performance involving a lot of pulling motions and dramatic facial expressions that suggested she was attempting to suck the life out of the room. Fitting, considering the situation. Still not sure if she's portraying a black hole or an overzealous vacuum cleaner, Lardo observed. The aliens conferred once again, their clicking language akin to a malfunctioning typewriter. After several tense moments, one of them gestured for Jace to step forward, a test of his strategic mettle. Great. Time for the brains of the operation to show off, Jace said, striding forward with as much confidence as a man about to arm wrestle a bear. He took a deep breath, glancing at the symbols, and began his performance. To the untrained eye, it looked like an elaborate dance of swirls and pauses, his hands mimicking the curves and lines of the alien carvings. It was either brilliant or insanity, but in this part of the universe those two were often neighbors. What's he doing? Lardo asked, leaning forward. Winning, hopefully, Calix replied, though her tone carried a hint of doubt under the bravado. The aliens watched, nodding slightly, their eyes reflecting something akin to understanding or at least mild curiosity. When Jace finished, the silence that followed was heavy with anticipation, the kind that usually preceded a guillotine drop. The tallest alien stepped forward, its expression inscrutable. You have passed this round, Jace exhaled, grinning at his team. Looks like we're still in the game, or at least not out of it. Yet, Vexar added, a realistic note in his voice. What's the next round? Guess the galactic password, Calix joked, though with the way things were going she might not be far off. Let's just hope it involves less interpretive dance and more holding still, Lardo said, the sound of metal clinking against metal as he adjusted his backpack. As the team regrouped, Jace continued examining the symbols, a scavenger hunt of potential clues. These symbols, they're like instructions. I think if we decipher them, we can predict the next game. You're saying we cheat by reading their cosmic playbook? Vexar asked, eyebrow arched. Strategize, Jace corrected. Big difference. Whatever you call it, let's make sure we come out on top, Calix said, her voice a mix of determination and mischief. With the aliens preparing for the next round, the team huddled together, Jace pointing out lines and curves that suggested patterns. It was a cosmic puzzle, one they needed to solve if they hoped to outwit their hosts. Feels like we're unearthing the secrets of the universe here, Lardo mused, his voice tinged with both awe and sarcasm. Or we're just decoding alien charades, Vexar countered, never one to indulge in flights of fancy. So what's the plan? Calix asked, eyes on Jace. We follow the symbols, align our actions with them, Jace explained. If I'm right, it should guide us through these games. Let's hope your pattern is the right one, Vexar said, eyeing the aliens warily. Otherwise, we're going to end up as cosmic roadkill. As the next round began, the team applied Jace's strategy, their movements and gestures aligning with the symbol's delicate dance. It was a bold move, a gamble as old as humanity itself, betting on the strange and the unknown, hoping to come out the other side with something tangible. The aliens observed, their silence a testament to their concentration. As the humans moved, mimicking cosmic events and universal concepts, the tension was palpable, the air ripe with the possibility of success or failure. And then, as if the universe itself paused to watch, the aliens nodded, their eyes reflecting a light that could only mean understanding or approval. The humans had played their part, and it seemed, for now at least, that the cosmic scales tipped in their favor. You have succeeded, the tallest alien announced, its voice a blend of surprise and acknowledgement. Guess we didn't completely botch it, Lardo said, his relief as palpable as his sarcasm. Not yet anyway, Calix replied, her smile a mixture of pride and disbelief. Vexar clapped Jace on the back. Good work, Lieutenant. You might have saved our skins without having to resort to interpretive dance lessons. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Jace replied, though his relief was evident. There's still more to go. The aliens led them to the next phase, a section of the comet marked by deeper carvings and an air of expectation. Whatever they faced next, the team was ready, or as ready as humans ever were when confronted with the unknown. Ready for round 3? Calix asked, shooting Vexar a look. Ready as I'll ever be, Vexar replied, his voice carrying the weight of both optimism and resignation. Let's just hope our luck holds out. With a final glance at the symbols and a silent prayer to whatever fates watched over fools and spacemen, the team prepared for their next challenge, determined to face the complex dance of alien games with the same irreverent spirit that had seen them through so far. The misguided optimism hovered above the comet, humming like a drunk bee that had just discovered how to breakdance. Its crew, neck-deep in galactic charades, were discovering that space diplomacy wasn't all about shaking hands and exchanging alien delicacies. No, sometimes it was about prancing around like idiots on a glowing ice rink, trying to avoid universal humiliation. As they prepared for the next round, Commander Astrid Kale appeared on the comms, her voice crackling like the universe's worst radio station. Vexar, you do realize that the outcome of each game influences our negotiation terms, right? Well, Commander, we were just about to try pin the tail on the cosmic donkey, Vexar replied dryly, his sarcasm sharper than a laser scalpel. Focus, Captain. These games are more than just for show. They are how these aliens assess our capabilities, our adaptability, Kale emphasized, her tone implying that Vexar's head might serve better as a paperweight than a strategic asset. Adaptability, got it. So what's next? Duck, duck, explode, Calix chimed in, adjusting her gear with the casual efficiency of someone who frequently faced potential dismemberment. The next round involves a physical challenge, Kale said. Prepare for anything, and Vexar, less interpretive dance, more strategic thinking. Strategic thinking. I left that in my other pants, Vexar muttered, but he nodded at Calix and Jace, indicating it was time to get serious, or at least as serious as they ever managed. The arena shifted, the symbols on the comet's surface rearranging themselves into new, complex patterns. The aliens watched with their usual inscrutability, eyes reflecting the dim glow of the ancient symbols. One alien, taller than the others and probably more important, gestured for the humans to proceed. "What's the plan, Jace?" Vexar asked, as they scrutinized the alien glyphs with a focus normally reserved for defusing bombs or picking the last donut. Jace, the team's resident genius and part-time pessimist, frowned at the symbols. These patterns, they change with each round. It's like a cryptic dance-off, and we're expected to keep in step. Someone should have told me to bring my dancing shoes, Lardo quipped, as he adjusted the straps on his backpack. Though I doubt they'd match the cosmic ballroom. Their task was clear, if not exactly straightforward. Navigate the shifting terrain of the arena without ending up as cosmic roadkill. Easier said than done when the floor beneath you was an enigmatic alien Rubik's Cube. "Okay, team, time to show these aliens that humans can walk and chew gum at the same time," Vexar said, his voice a curious mix of bravado and desperation. Calix led the way, her eyes scanning the symbols for clues. "This one's new," she said, pointing to a series of lines that looked suspiciously like a road map drawn by a drunken spider. "Looks like a bad noodle doodle," Lardo added, squinting at the markings. "Let's just hope it leads us somewhere other than the edge of oblivion," Jace murmured, stepping forward to join her. The team moved cautiously, mimicking the aliens' earlier gestures with a mix of precision and sheer guesswork. Jace led them in a series of movements that either mimicked a cosmic ballet or a very confused line dance. The important thing was not falling flat on their faces. "We look like we're auditioning for Galaxy's Got Talent," Calix joked, managing a grin despite the sweat beading on her brow. "More like Galaxy's Got Idiots," Vexar retorted, though his steps were as careful as any of theirs. "Try not to trip over your own feet." As they moved, the aliens watched, occasionally nodding in that unsettling way that suggested either approval or a plan to serve them as the evening's entertainment. The humans had no choice but to trust in Jace's ability to interpret the aliens' cryptic choreography. "So, what happens if we screw this up?" Lardo asked, not bothering to hide his curiosity. "We become eternal fodder for alien stand-up routines," Vexar replied. "Or worse, we get stuck here forever trying to learn their version of the cha-cha. If we keep this up, we might as well be teaching them the worm," Calix said, sidestepping a particularly bright symbol. Jace stopped, scrutinizing the next set of symbols. "Wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. It's a trap. A trap." "Great," Vexar said, rolling his eyes. "Who'd have thought we'd fall into one of those? More like a cosmic practical joke," Lardo added, his expression a mix of exasperation and amusement. Jace shook his head, recalculating their path. "We need to reverse our movements. It's like a mirror image of what we just did. Backward dancing." "Perfect," Calix muttered, but she began moving in reverse, the rest of the team following suit. It was awkward, like trying to ride a unicycle backwards through a minefield, but they were nothing if not adaptable. "Please tell me this is the last round," Vexar said, as they completed the sequence. "Hardly," Kale's voice crackled through the comms. "But you're adapting, which is what the aliens value. Continue to show them our flexibility." "Flexibility." "Right," Lardo said, twisting his arm in a way nature never intended as they pivoted around another glowing symbol. The aliens conferred, their clicking language a discordant symphony of sound that made even the most chaotic human argument sound like a lullaby. After a tense moment that stretched longer than Vexar's patience, the lead alien stepped forward. You have progressed, it announced, the pause probably meant for dramatic effect or perhaps just to irritate the humans. Progressed. We practically invented a new form of space ballet, Vexar said, though his relief was palpable. Don't get too comfy, Captain, Jace warned. If my guess is right, the next challenge will be even tougher. These symbols were just a warm-up. Bring it on, Calix said with a shrug. We've got adaptability in spades, right? Or at least enough to bluff our way through, Vexar added. Lardo, any thoughts? Just one, Lardo replied, grinning. If this is what they're using to judge us, maybe we should make them a mixtape. As they prepared for the next stage, Vexar took a moment to appreciate the sheer absurdity of their situation. Here they were, a ragtag crew of humans, trying to prove their worth through cosmic interpretive dance, all while a drunk bee of a spaceship hovered overhead. Ready for whatever comes next? Vexar asked his team, a grin playing on his lips despite the tension. As ready as we'll ever be, Calix replied, her voice carrying that familiar blend of sarcasm and resolve. With a final nod, they stepped forward, ready to face whatever cosmic charade the universe had in store for them next. Whether they'd come out victorious or just become the latest cautionary tale in intergalactic diplomacy was anyone's guess. But for now, at least, they were still in the game, still making their irreverent way through the universe one ridiculous challenge at a time. And somewhere in the great cosmic theater, Vexar hoped, someone was enjoying the show. The misguided optimism continued to hover above the comet, still buzzing like a tipsy insect caught in a wind tunnel. Beneath it, the crew was locked in an interstellar performance critique, where failing to impress could lead to consequences far more severe than a bad Yelp review. Commander Astrid Kale's voice crackled over the comms once more, cutting through the tension with the subtlety of a chainsaw. Heads up, team, we've got a change in the rules, she announced, her voice a mix of static and authority. The aliens have decided to spice things up. Fantastic, Vexar muttered, rubbing his temples as if trying to massage away the impending headache. What now? Do we have to juggle flaming asteroids? Close. The stakes are higher, Kale replied. Now they want a demonstration of teamwork and innovation under pressure. If you fail, we might as well start setting up camp here. Camping on a comet. Sounds cozy, Lardo quipped, adjusting the straps of his ever-present backpack. Do they at least give out marshmallows? Try not to burn them, Calix shot back, though her expression was as serious as a solar flare. So what's the plan, fearless leader? Before Vexar could answer, Sergeant Rin Echo, the team's quick thinker and part-time daredevil, stepped forward with a sly grin. I've got an idea, she said, her voice carrying a confidence that suggested she wasn't just winging it, though that was often her style. Let me guess, Jace drawled, folding his arms. We improvise, hope for the best, and pray we don't end up as cosmic cannon fodder. Pretty much, Rin replied, unfazed. But this time we'll do it with style. You mean like when you decided to ride that meteor across the asteroid belt last year? Vexar asked, one eyebrow raised. Because I'm still picking bits of space rock out of my hair. Yeah, but that worked, didn't it? Rin countered. And besides, we're fighting for survival here, not just style points. All right, Rin, enlighten us, Calix said, her voice carrying a hint of skepticism. What's the grand plan? Rin took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the cometscape as she spoke. We use their own symbols against them, she began, gesturing to the glowing patterns that seemed to taunt them with their cryptic brilliance. Each symbol responds to a specific action or combination. We just need to figure out which ones trigger the right responses. So, it's a cosmic cheat code? Lardo asked. Exactly, Rin replied, her grin widening. Think of it like a puzzle, but with a lot more at stake than bragging rights. And how do we figure out which symbols do what? Vexar asked, his skepticism warring with curiosity. We experiment, Rin said simply, and hope we don't accidentally trigger self-destruct. Comforting thought, Jace said, shaking his head. But it's not like we've got better options. With the plan set, the team spread out across the arena, their movements cautious yet purposeful. The aliens watched, their expressions inscrutable as the humans began their dance of trial and error. It was like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube with a blindfold, and the aliens were the judges ready to deliver their verdict. "Try this one," Calix suggested, pointing to a symbol that resembled a snowflake caught in a blender. Rin stepped forward, her hands hovering over the symbol. "Here goes nothing," she muttered, tracing the pattern with a fingertip. The symbol pulsed in response, a low hum resonating through the ground. "That's either good or very bad," Lardo said, craning his neck to see the result. "Let's hope it's the former," Vexar replied, glancing at the aliens who had started whispering among themselves. As the team continued their efforts, it became clear that Rin's plan was beginning to pay off. Certain symbols reacted positively, altering the terrain in ways that suggested progress, while others fizzled out or triggered minor setbacks. It was like defusing a bomb with a dance routine, and they were learning the steps as they went. "Anyone else feel like they're back in school, trying to cheat off the smart kids' homework?" Jace asked, as he manipulated a symbol to reveal a new section of the arena. "More like we're the smart kids, and the aliens are just hoping we stick around long enough to fill out the class," Rin replied, her voice tinged with triumph as another symbol reacted favorably. Despite the rising pressure, the team worked with an efficiency that spoke of both desperation and determination. They moved as one, adapting to each new challenge with a fluidity that belied the absurdity of their situation. Somehow, against the odds, they were managing to keep up with the ever-changing rules. "Are we actually doing this?" Calix asked, disbelief mingling with excitement. "Looks like it," Vexar said, nodding in agreement. "Just don't get cocky." "Too late," Lardo chimed in as he successfully triggered another symbol. "I was born cocky." "I can attest to that," Jace added with a smirk. With each successful maneuver, the aliens' expressions shifted from inscrutable to something approaching respect, or at least what passed for it in alien circles. Finally, the lead alien stepped forward, its gaze fixed on the humans. "You have demonstrated unexpected adaptability," it said, its voice a curious mix of approval and begrudging admission. "Unexpected," Vexar echoed, unable to resist a smirk. "We specialize in unexpected. Then perhaps you will succeed. In the final test," the alien continued, its gaze steady. "A test of unity." "Unity," Rin repeated, her voice thoughtful. "What do they mean by that?" Before anyone could speculate, the arena began to shift again. The symbols rearranged themselves, forming a complex network that pulsed with energy. It was as if the comet itself was alive, and they were standing in its beating heart. "Looks like we're about to find out," Vexar said, his expression wary yet determined. "Let's show them what human unity looks like." With the aliens watching, the team prepared for the final test. Whatever it entailed, they knew they would face it together, with the same irreverent spirit that had seen them through so much already. They were, after all, the crew of the Misguided Optimism, a name that might have seemed like a joke at first, but one that now felt like a badge of honor. As the symbols glowed brighter, the team linked hands, a gesture of solidarity that transcended the absurdity of their situation. Here they were, a ragtag group of humans, defying the odds in a game of cosmic charades, united by their shared stubbornness and a refusal to be outdone. "Let's finish this," Rin said, her voice steady and sure. And with that, they stepped forward, ready to face whatever the universe had in store. Whether they would emerge victorious or become the latest cautionary tale in intergalactic diplomacy was still uncertain, but one thing was clear. They would face it together, with all the irreverence and determination that defined them. As the arena lit up in response to their actions, Vexar couldn't help but wonder if somewhere in the vastness of space, someone was watching and enjoying the show. And maybe, just maybe, they'd be rooting for the humans, those scrappy, unpredictable beings who never quite did what was expected. "We've got this," Calix said, her confidence contagious as the team moved as one. "Yeah," Vexar agreed, a grin spreading across his face. "We do." The final test was underway, and the crew of the Misguided Optimism was ready to prove that sometimes the universe's biggest underdogs could pull off the impossible. And if they failed, well, at least they'd go down swinging, and maybe get a laugh out of it along the way. The Misguided Optimism continued to hover like a malfunctioning toaster on the fritz, while below, the crew huddled in the center of the arena, trying to make sense of the cosmic Rorschach test that was their lives. Captain Vexar Lun, for one, felt like the universe was playing a particularly cruel joke at his expense. "We're outmatched," he muttered, watching the alien symbols rearranging themselves with the casual arrogance of a cat knocking over a glass. "We're like ants trying to outsmart a magnifying glass." "Great pep talk, Vexar," Calyx deadpanned, her eyes narrowing at a particularly unfriendly-looking alien symbol. "Got any more inspiring metaphors up your sleeve, or was that your grand finale?" "Hey, I'm full of metaphors and despair," Vexar shot back, his fingers tapping nervously against his temple. "Just not sure which one's more useful right now." Sergeant Calyx, rarely one to let reality get her down, forced a smile. "I dunno. Despair might win us some sympathy points, if only we were dealing with sympathetic beings." The crew around them was a mix of tension and frayed nerves, each member trying to decipher the alien language as if it held the answers to life, the universe, and everything else they really didn't want to know about. "Reminds me of the time I tried karaoke on Zeta 9, Lardo said, shifting his backpack like a makeshift security blanket. "Only this time, I'm not drunk enough to think I'm the next big thing." "Or the next big bang," Jace dryly added, his eyes scanning the symbols with the focus of someone contemplating their own disastrous life choices. "If we screw this up, we might just go out with a literal bang." "Cheery thought for a cheery day," Vexar mumbled, peering at the alien audience that watched with the disinterested air of bureaucrats at a budget meeting. As if on cue, the air shimmered with an otherworldly presence, and the lead alien spoke again, its voice a blend of old machinery and condescending tutor. "The final test requires unity," it intoned, as if reciting a particularly bland grocery list. "Unity, huh?" Calyx echoed, her voice tinged with skepticism. "Because nothing says unity like barely knowing each other's last names." "Hey, we know each other's first names," Lardo quipped, as if that was an accomplishment worthy of a medal. "I'll engrave that on my tombstone," Vexar replied, his sarcasm a thin veneer over the churning doubt in his stomach. Here lies Vexar Lun, who knew first names and died for it. And so they stood, a ragtag team of misfits and reluctant heroes, facing down the cosmic abyss with all the bravado of a school play on opening night. The aliens watched, their expressions inscrutable as ever, while Vexar felt the oppressive weight of the universe settling comfortably on his shoulders like a particularly heavy cat. "Feels like we're one step away from a game over," Jace commented, his voice low and grim. "And I really hate the idea of starting over." "Don't worry," Rin chimed in, her eyes narrowing as she studied the swirling symbols. "I've got some extra lives up my sleeve." "Great," Lardo muttered, "because I left all mine back on Zeta 9. As they pondered their next move, Corporal Zephyr Ivo, a name that sounded like it had been pulled from a sci-fi name generator, emerged from the shadows, holding a datapad like it was the Holy Grail. "Hey, Captain," he called, his voice a mix of excitement and uncertainty. "I think I've found something. Please tell me it's the exit," Vexar replied, only half joking. "Better," Zephyr said, a grin spreading across his face like a virus. "A forgotten tactic. It's a game we used to play back at the academy. Unity was the code name. Never thought it'd come in handy." Vexar arched an eyebrow, more intrigued than he cared to admit. "And this game is supposed to save our skins, how exactly?" "It's a team tactic," Zephyr explained, tapping the datapad like a magician revealing a trick. "Each player contributes to a larger strategy. It's like chess but with more moving pieces and less logic." "Sounds like my kind of game," Rin said with a smirk. "So, what's the catch?" Zephyr hesitated, glancing at the symbols as if they might bite. "The catch is we have to work together, perfectly. One mistake and it's game over." Vexar frowned, his optimism as misplaced as his socks on a Monday morning. "Unity through teamwork sounds like a greeting card, more like a death wish," Jace added. "But I'm in. Beats getting vaporized doing nothing." "High praise indeed," Vexar replied, resisting the urge to roll his eyes. "All right, Zephyr, lead the way. But if this ends with us turning into cosmic dust, I'm coming back to haunt you." "I'll take my chances," Zephyr said, his grin not faltering as he began outlining the plan. The symbols responded to their newfound unity with a pulsating rhythm that seemed to match the crew's racing hearts. Each step, each action, was a delicate dance in a game of trust and intuition, all set against the backdrop of an alien arena that felt more like a metaphorical noose tightening with each move. "Feels like we're walking a tightrope over a pit of lava," Lardo muttered, his eyes darting from one glowing symbol to the next. "More like a tightrope over a pit of our own incompetence," Calyx shot back, her voice sharp enough to cut through the tension. As they executed Zephyr's plan, the symbols began to pulse and shift, responding to their coordinated efforts with a slow, deliberate grace that was both nerve-wracking and oddly satisfying. It was like watching a symphony unfold, if the symphony was composed of barely contained chaos and the conductor was a cynical pessimist. "Almost like we're not completely hopeless," Jace commented, his tone laced with irony as the symbols began to rearrange into a coherent pattern. "Don't jinx it," Vexar warned, his voice a cautionary whisper. "The universe is just waiting for us to let our guard down." Despite the odds, the crew managed to synchronize their movements, each member playing a vital role in the unfolding strategy. It was a testament to their shared desperation and stubborn refusal to give up, a ragtag team of flawed individuals united by the need to survive. "Keep it up," Zephyr urged, his voice rising above the hum of the arena. "We're almost there." "Almost," Rin echoed, her eyes fixed on the symbols as they began to glow with an intensity that suggested imminent victory or catastrophic failure. The aliens watched, their expressions inscrutable but somehow hinting at approval. Perhaps, somewhere in their inscrutable minds, they were impressed by the humans' audacity, by their willingness to face down the cosmic odds with nothing more than a misguided sense of optimism. "Almost feels like they're rooting for us," Lardo remarked, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Or just curious to see how spectacularly we'll fail," Calyx countered, her voice dripping with sarcasm. With the final steps of the plan unfolding, the crew moved with a confidence born of necessity, each action flowing into the next with the precision of a well-oiled machine. It was a dance of survival, a testament to their willingness to defy the odds and face the unknown with all the courage and irreverence they could muster. "We've got this," Vexar breathed, his voice barely more than a whisper as they neared the endgame. "Yeah," Rin agreed, a smile tugging at her lips. "We do." In the end, it wasn't just about the symbols or the arena or the aliens watching with their inscrutable gazes. It was about them, the crew of the misguided optimism, standing together against the universe with nothing but their shared defiance and a determination to prove that sometimes, just sometimes, humanity could surprise even the most jaded of observers. As the final symbol fell into place, the arena lit up with a brilliance that was both dazzling and terrifying, casting shadows that danced across the crew like specters of their own making. The aliens, for their part, remained silent, their expressions unreadable as ever. "We did it," Zephyr said, his voice filled with a mix of disbelief and relief. "Looks like it," Vexar replied, his own disbelief warring with a newfound sense of hope, "though I'm not counting my chickens yet. Maybe they'll give us a participation trophy," Jace suggested, his voice a sardonic drawl. "Or a one-way ticket back home," Calyx added, her voice tinged with a wry humor that belied her own relief. As they stood amidst the glowing symbols, the crew of the misguided optimism couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. They had faced down the cosmic odds and emerged victorious, not through brute force or sheer luck, but through unity and an unwavering belief in their ability to defy expectations. And so they waited, their fate now in the hands of the aliens who had orchestrated this bizarre test. Whatever the outcome, they knew they had given it their all, and that was something worth celebrating, if only for a moment. "Whatever happens next," Vexar said, his voice steady and sure, "we faced it together. And isn't that just the cheesiest thing you've ever said?" Rin teased, her laughter lightening the mood. "Shut up, Rin," Vexar shot back, though his smile betrayed his own amusement. "Let me have this moment." As they waited for the aliens' response, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that somehow, somewhere in the vast expanse of space, they had managed to tip the scales in their favor. Whether it was enough to secure their survival remained to be seen, but for now, they were content to bask in the victory they had won, with all the wit, irreverence, and determination that defined them. Vexar Lun rubbed the back of his neck, feeling like a man who'd just been informed of a tax audit and a colonoscopy in the same breath. Victory, if you could call it that, had left a bitter taste. "So, we're not dead, that's something," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Rin Echo threw him a sidelong glance. "And here I thought your funeral would be the highlight of my week." "Don't worry, Rin," Calyx piped in, her grin as sharp as a shattered wine bottle. "We can always host a mock service. I'll bring the snacks." "Snacks for a mock funeral? Classy," Jace Thorne drawled, arms crossed like he was waiting for someone to bring the punchline. "Better than your last attempt at diplomacy," Calyx shot back. "Remember the How to Be Diplomatic with Aliens handbook you turned into a paper plane?" "Hey, it was either that or read it and die of boredom," Jace replied, shrugging with a casualness that belied the tension in the air. Meanwhile, Zephyr Ivo was busy fidgeting with his datapad, his face aglow with the kind of excitement generally reserved for lottery winners and mad scientists. "You know, this could really work," he said, mostly to himself. "Famous last words," Vexar muttered. "Right up there with 'trust me, I've done this a million times.'" Zephyr either didn't hear or chose to ignore him, absorbed in his newfound mission. "If we can just tweak the strategy a bit." "Zephyr, I love your enthusiasm," Rin interrupted, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "but maybe save the tweaking for after we're not about to be shredded into cosmic confetti." Commander Astrid Kale, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, decided to finally join the conversation, her voice as sharp and direct as a laser scalpel. "Enough. If we're going to get out of this with our skins intact, we need to focus." Her words snapped the crew to attention, like soldiers at roll call, not because they were particularly obedient, but because Astrid had a way of making you feel like disobeying her might get you listed as missing in action. "So, Zephyr," Astrid continued, looking at him with the kind of intensity that suggested she could see straight into his soul, "what's this strategy you're so in love with?" "Glad you asked, Come. It's all about the symbols. We've got to think of them less like a puzzle and more like a chessboard. Each move affects the others, and if we can predict the aliens' moves, then we can outsmart them," Vexar finished, though he sounded like he was trying to convince himself as much as anyone else. "Exactly," Zephyr nodded, his enthusiasm infectious, or maybe just annoying depending on your perspective. Lardo, who'd been uncharacteristically silent, finally spoke up, his voice a gravelly rumble. "And what if they change the rules again, like they love doing?" "Then we adapt," Zephyr said, almost like it was that simple. "We've been improvising since we got out of diapers." "Speak for yourself," Jace interjected, eyes sparkling with mischief. "I was born sophisticated." "Yeah, and you've been compensating ever since," Calyx quipped, earning a smattering of chuckles. Even in the face of potential doom, gallows humor was their best defense. Astrid tapped her chin, weighing options like a judge at a particularly contentious trial. "All right, Zephyr, let's see your plan in action. But remember, one misstep and it's not just game over. It's game over with a side of vaporization." "No pressure then," Rin smirked, but her eyes were locked on the swirling symbols, her mind racing through possibilities. The team gathered around Zepha's datapad like moths to a particularly dangerous flame. The symbols continued their maddening dance, glowing with an intensity that promised either salvation or obliteration. "Feels like we're betting on a three-legged horse here," Vexar muttered, half expecting the universe to laugh right in his face. "And yet it's the best bet we've got," Jace replied, his grin more wolfish than friendly. "Let's roll the dice." As they began to implement Zepha's strategy, each crew member fell into a rhythm, their movements almost instinctive. The symbols responded, shifting and changing as if they were alive, a cosmic game board with stakes beyond imagining. "Just think of it as a team-building exercise," Lardo said, though his expression suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. "Right," Calix replied dryly, "because nothing builds a team like the threat of imminent death." The aliens, their expressions inscrutable as ever, watched the unfolding drama with what might have been curiosity or disdain. It was impossible to tell and perhaps irrelevant. The crew's fate hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of an abyss they couldn't see. "Almost there," Zepha whispered, as if saying it too loud might jinx them. The symbols were aligning, forming a pattern that seemed to pulse with potential energy. "Feels like riding a roller coaster in the dark," Rin commented, her voice tight with controlled tension. "Not sure if we're going up or down." "Either way, it's a hell of a ride," Jace noted, his eyes never leaving the symbols. Then, as if the universe had been holding its breath, the symbols stopped. The arena was silent, a pregnant pause filled with expectation and dread. "And now we wait," Vexar said, half expecting the floor to open up beneath them. The aliens conferred among themselves, their voices a low hum like distant thunder. It was a sound that promised change, though not necessarily the kind they hoped for. After what felt like an eternity, the lead alien spoke, its voice carrying an edge that suggested a sense of begrudging respect, or at least the alien equivalent. "You have succeeded in this test of unity," it intoned, the words echoing through the arena like a chorus of ghosts. "Success?" Lardo asked, his tone disbelieving. "I wasn't aware that was on the menu." "Apparently it is," Vexar replied, though he didn't look entirely convinced. "But let's not celebrate until we're clear of this death trap." The alien continued, its gaze sweeping over them like a spotlight. "Yet one final challenge remains." "And there it is," Rin sighed, rolling her eyes skyward as if appealing to a higher power. "The other shoe. This final test will determine whether you are worthy to return," the alien declared, its presence looming large in the arena. "Return? I was just getting used to this place," Calix quipped, though her voice was tinged with anxiety. "To what do we owe this final pleasure?" Astrid asked, her voice steady but her eyes narrowed in suspicion. The alien didn't answer immediately, as if savoring the moment. Instead, it gestured toward the symbols, which flared brightly once more, rearranging into a new pattern that seemed to defy logic and sanity. "We call it the Crucible of Choices," the alien announced, as if that explained anything. "Crucible of Choices," Jace repeated, his tone dry. "Sounds like a bad reality show, or a choose-your-own-adventure book where all paths lead to doom," Calix added, her expression a mix of grim acceptance and defiance. "The rules are simple," the alien continued, oblivious or indifferent to their sarcasm. "Each of you must make a choice, and those choices will determine your fate." "Great," Vexar muttered, feeling like a gambler down to his last chip. "More choices. Just what we needed," Rin agreed. "Another chance to screw everything up." The symbols glowed with a malevolent energy, casting shadows that danced across the crew like demons in the dark. Each symbol represented a choice, a path that could lead to salvation or destruction. "No pressure," Lardo said, though his voice carried the weight of what was at stake. "Remember unity," Zephyr reminded them, as if that single word held the power to save them all. "Unity," Vexar echoed, though the word felt hollow in his mouth. "Guess it's time to see if we've really learned anything." One by one, they approached the symbols, each crew member making their choice in a ritual that felt both sacred and profane. It was a moment of clarity and madness, the kind that stripped away pretense and left only raw nerves and exposed truths. "Feels like standing on the edge of a cliff," Jace murmured, his fingers brushing a symbol that pulsed with ominous promise. "And hoping the fall won't kill us," Calyx added, her own choice made with a defiance that belied the fear in her eyes. As the last choice was made, the arena seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with anticipation and dread. The symbols responded, shifting and changing in a kaleidoscope of colors that threatened to overwhelm the senses. Then, with a final, blinding flash, the symbols vanished, leaving the crew standing in a darkness that felt both oppressive and liberating. "Well, that was anticlimactic," Rin said, breaking the silence with a laugh that sounded slightly unhinged. "Not over yet," Astrid cautioned, her eyes scanning the arena for any sign of what was to come. The aliens conferred once more, their voices a low murmur that held the promise of judgment. It was a moment that stretched on, each second a lifetime in its own right. Finally, the lead alien spoke, its voice a blend of finality and reluctant admiration. "You have proven yourselves worthy," it said, the words carrying a weight that promised salvation, "but at what cost?" "Worthy," Vexar repeated, his voice flat. "Never thought I'd hear that word here." "But we did," Jace replied, a grin breaking through his facade of indifference. "Let's take what we can get." The alien nodded, a gesture that felt oddly human in its simplicity. "You may return." "And just like that we're free," Calyx said, though her voice carried an edge of disbelief. "For now," Lardo added, ever the realist. As they prepared to leave the arena, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that they had crossed a threshold, emerged from a trial by fire with a newfound sense of camaraderie and purpose. It was a feeling that would serve them well in the uncertain days to come. "So, what's next?" Zephyr asked, his voice carrying a note of hope. Vexar shrugged, his expression one of weary satisfaction. "We regroup, we recover, and we figure out what the hell just happened. And in the meantime," Rin pressed, her eyes bright with anticipation. "In the meantime," Astrid said, her voice firm and decisive, "we remember that sometimes the universe can surprise even the most jaded of us." "Yeah," Vexar agreed, though his tone was more sardonic than sincere. "But let's not get too comfortable. I'd hate to jinx our streak." With one final look at the arena, the crew of the Misguided Optimism turned and headed back to their ship, ready to face whatever the universe had in store for them next. They had survived the crucible and emerged stronger for it, united by their shared defiance and an indomitable will to survive. The Misguided Optimism hung above the comet like a toaster with an inferiority complex, buzzing away as the crew gathered in its shadow. Vexar Lun rubbed his temples, trying to massage away the headache that had become his constant companion. The universe must have missed the memo that he wasn't its personal punching bag. "Well, that was fun," Rin Echo remarked, unzipping her spacesuit with the nonchalance of someone who'd just returned from a leisurely stroll rather than surviving a near-death experience. "Can't wait for the extended director's cut." Jace Thorne leaned against a bulkhead, arms crossed, his smirk as permanent as the grease stains on his uniform. "I'd say we nailed that last round." "I mean, who knew teamwork was the secret ingredient? Next, they'll be telling us that water's wet." Astrid Kale, ever the embodiment of authority, cut in, her voice sharp enough to split atoms. "Let's not get cocky. We still have to negotiate terms with our alien friends. Who knows what kind of cosmic fine print we've just agreed to." Zephyr Ivo, still glued to his datapad, was flipping through data streams faster than a caffeine-fueled hacker on a deadline. "The way I see it," he began, eyes not leaving the screen, "our unique human creativity and adaptability have impressed the aliens. They'll be looking to form an alliance." Calyx raised an eyebrow, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Oh sure, nothing like a little death-defying charade to seal a business deal. I wonder if we get matching t-shirts." Lardo, the team's artifact-loving technician, was sorting through his backpack with the intensity of a kid searching for lost candy. I don't know about you folks, but I'd like to get off this rock before the universe decides to throw us another curveball. Here's hoping they don't want us to play charades for every negotiation, Vexar muttered, feeling like he was perpetually one bad decision away from a cosmic slap in the face. As the crew prepped for the meeting with the aliens, the tension in the air was as thick as the optimism implied by their ship's name. The arena they'd left behind was a hive of activity as alien figures moved about, preparing for the grand negotiation. Or as Calix liked to call it, the intergalactic pissing contest. The lead alien, who they'd privately dubbed Squidward due to its tentacle-like appendages and perpetual look of exasperation, awaited them at the negotiating table, a sleek, metallic construct that hummed with energy. The seats were suspiciously comfortable, almost as if designed to lull occupants into a false sense of security. "Welcome," Squidward intoned, its voice like nails on a chalkboard if chalkboards were a universal constant. "You have demonstrated a commendable level of ingenuity and adaptability." "Awa shucks," Rin said, flashing a grin that could be mistaken for sincerity. "You're going to make us blush." "We wish to discuss an alliance," Squidward continued, ignoring the quip with the grace of a diplomat who'd seen it all. Vexar nodded, trying to exude the calm confidence of a man who wasn't one wrong word away from vaporization. "An alliance sounds beneficial, but we need to understand what that entails." "Interesting choice of words," Jace murmured under his breath, leaning close enough for Vexar to catch his comment. "Like asking a loan shark about interest rates." Squidward gestured with its appendages, and a holographic display flickered to life above the table, showing star maps, trade routes, and resources that looked tantalizing even to skeptical eyes. "We offer mutual benefit," it explained. "Exchange of technology, protection, and trade routes." Zephyr glanced at Astrid, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. He put down his datapad and focused on the hologram. "Protection from what, exactly?" "Others," Squidward said, as if the answer was as obvious as the air in their lungs, thin and likely to run out if they weren't careful. "Others," Calix repeated, her mind conjuring images of space pirates, aggressive alien species, and bureaucrats with too much time on their hands. "Care to elaborate?" Squidward's tentacles did a little dance that might have been a shrug. "The galaxy is vast and dangerous. Alliances ensure survival." "Right," Vexar said, choosing to ignore the existential dread creeping up his spine. "And in return, the sharing of human creativity and adaptability," Squidward replied. "Your species has demonstrated potential that is unexpected." "Unexpected." Vexar chuckled darkly at the understatement. They were human after all, masters of making the impossible happen, usually by accident. "Well," Astrid said, her tone brokering no argument, "if we're going to do this, we'll need assurances that this alliance benefits both parties equally." "Such an agreement would be advantageous," Squidward conceded, the word sounding like it physically pained it to say. Rin leaned over to Lardo and whispered, "I think we should ask for some alien snacks, for research purposes." Lardo snorted, but his eyes remained serious as he scanned the holographic display, committing the details to memory. "I just hope they don't expect us to play more games. I'm running out of winning strategies." As the negotiations continued, the crew found themselves in a surreal dance of words and gestures, punctuated by moments of levity and tension. The aliens, for all their inscrutability, seemed genuinely interested in what the humans had to offer, beyond just their ability to survive death-defying games. Calix leaned back in her chair, smirking at the absurdity of it all. "Who'd have thought? Our little misfit crew making deals with space squids." "Speak for yourself," Jay said, his expression a mix of strategic calculation and utter disbelief. "I'm still half convinced this is an elaborate prank." Vexar, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders, glanced around at his crew. They might be irreverent, sarcastic, and prone to gallows humor, but they were his crew. And together, they had turned a cosmic joke into something he could almost call a success. "So," Rin said, breaking into his thoughts. "Do you think they'll throw in a couple of those glowing symbols? Might make a nice nightlight. Only if you promise not to blow us all up trying to figure out how they work," Lardo shot back, earning a round of laughter. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Squidward made a gesture that could only be interpreted as a nod. "We accept the terms. The alliance is formed." As the crew exchanged glances, a mix of relief and disbelief settled over them. They had done it. Against all odds, they had secured an alliance that promised to bring benefits they could scarcely imagine. The misguided optimism might still be a bucket of bolts, but its crew had proven more than worthy of its name. "Here's to human ingenuity," Zephyr said, raising an imaginary glass, "and to alliances forged in the crucible of insanity." Vexar couldn't help but laugh, shaking his head at the absurdity of it all. "And to whatever comes next," he added, knowing full well that the universe wasn't done with them yet. As they prepared to depart, Vexar took one last look at Squidward, wondering if they'd ever truly understand the aliens, or if they were simply fated to be the galaxy's most bizarre double act. "Until next time, then," he said, offering a salute that felt both genuine and utterly ridiculous. "Until next time," Squidward replied, its voice echoing in the ship's hold as the crew made their way back to the misguided optimism. The ship's engines hummed to life, that familiar sound of a drunk bee filling the air as they ascended from the comet's surface. As the stars stretched out before them, Vexar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction, even as he braced for whatever chaos the universe had in store. "Well, team," Astrid said, settling into her command seat with a sigh, "we've got an alliance, a ship that's still in one piece, and a crew that's somehow still speaking to each other. I'd call that a win. At least until the next cosmic joke lands on our heads," Jace added, though his grin betrayed an optimism he rarely showed. "And when it does," Rin said, her eyes sparkling with the thrill of possibility, "we'll be ready." Vexar watched as his crew settled into their roles, each one a vital part of a whole that was as chaotic as it was brilliant. They might be a ragtag bunch of misfits, but they were his misfits, and together they were ready to face whatever the galaxy threw their way. After all, the universe might be a cruel joke, but it was one they were determined to survive, and maybe even get the last laugh. As the misguided optimism hummed like a drunk bee on autopilot, Captain Vexar Lund leaned back in his chair and let out a long sigh that felt like deflating an inflatable pool toy. His crew was alive and relatively unscathed, which might have been a small miracle or a cosmic oversight. Either way, they'd managed to broker an alliance with the squid-like aliens without detonating or getting turned into cosmic confetti. "Well, that was something," he said, rubbing his temples as if trying to massage out the universe-induced headache that never quite left him. Sergeant Calix, sitting across the room, gave him a sympathetic smirk. "Something. More like a cosmic stand-up routine with a side of potential annihilation." Her humor was both her armor and her weapon, and she'd used it liberally throughout the negotiations. "I thought you liked charades," Lieutenant Jace Thorne chimed in, the permanent smirk etched on his face making him look like a mischievous cat. "You know, like diffusing bombs with a blindfold. Keeps you sharp." "Sharp or just perpetually on edge?" Calix shot back. "Both," Jace replied with a wink, clearly enjoying the banter more than he probably should. Technician Lardo, ever the connoisseur of gadgets and trinkets, was rummaging through his backpack, an endless abyss of weird and wonderful artifacts he'd collected from every corner of the universe. "You know," he said, holding up what looked like a spoon made of something that wasn't quite metal, "I think I found a souvenir. Do you think this qualifies as cultural appropriation?" Rin Echo, their resident daredevil and thrill-seeker, leaned over with a grin. "Only if you use it in a way that pisses someone off. Which, knowing you, is bound to happen." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," Lardo replied dryly, tucking the spoon back into his pack. Zephyr Ivo, data stream still flickering on his screen, finally looked up. "Think of it as a trophy," he suggested. proof that we not only survived but thrived, and in a way that defies logic and possibly several universal laws. Vexar chuckled. And all it cost us was a bit of dignity and a few more gray hairs. Commander Astrid Kale, never one to let the crew's antics derail the mission, crossed her arms and regarded them with her usual mix of approval and exasperation. It's not over yet. We've got an alliance, but now we have to uphold our end of the bargain and survive long enough to see if the aliens hold up theirs, Zephyr added with a nod. Minor detail, Jay said, waving a hand dismissively. What's important is that we've set a precedent. Humans, masters of improvisation and unintended interstellar diplomacy, or cosmic clowns, Calyx murmured, though her smile betrayed her pride. You think we'll get more gigs like this? Rin asked, eyes gleaming with anticipation. Well, considering our newfound reputation as the galaxy's favorite circus act, Lardo mused, I'd say there's a good chance. Who wouldn't want a piece of this chaos? As long as they don't expect us to juggle planets next time, Vexar said, shaking his head. I'm not sure my nerves can handle it, or my liver, Calyx added. I think I need a drink after all that. The crew exchanged knowing looks, the kind that said we really shouldn't, but let's do it anyway. Vexar couldn't help but feel a swell of affection for them. They were irreverent, sometimes insubordinate, and undeniably the best crew he could imagine. All right, team, Astrid said, clapping her hands together to get their attention. We've got an alliance to uphold and a reputation to maintain. Let's get back to work and make sure we don't accidentally start an intergalactic war. Ah, the glamorous life, Jace said, standing up and stretching. Saving the universe, one blunder at a time, and somehow still managing to look good doing it, Rin added, striking a mock-heroic pose. Vexar laughed, the sound echoing through the bridge like a release valve finally being opened. Let's get to it then, he said, feeling a renewed sense of purpose despite the ever-present headache. We've got stars to jump and aliens to impress. And maybe, Lardo suggested as they dispersed, we can figure out how to use these glowing symbols without blowing ourselves up. Always an optimist, Vexar quipped, though he had to admit there was something about those symbols that piqued his curiosity. Maybe they were more than just decoration, a puzzle waiting to be solved. After all, the universe loved its little mysteries and the chaos they caused. As the crew settled back into their roles, the tension of the past few hours began to dissipate, leaving behind a sense of accomplishment and a readiness for whatever came next. The misguided optimism might have been a ship with a name that seemed a cruel joke, but it had carried them through more than a few trials, and apparently a few victories as well. To future adventures, then, Vexar said quietly, gazing out at the endless stretch of stars that beckoned to them. It was a call that promised more challenges, more madness, and, if they were lucky, more laughter along the way. In the end, they were just a ragtag bunch of misfits, navigating the cosmic absurdity with irreverence and grit. And in a universe that seemed determined to test their limits, they'd proven one undeniable truth. Chaos was their playground, and they were more than ready to embrace it.